Okay, so poor Isabel is now locked in the potato bin because um, it was found out, it was told to Madam that that Isabel had taken a note from a rebel commander. So, Lady Madam's not very happy about all that. Okay, the potato bin was more than half filled with potatoes and smelled of damp earth and worms. There was not enough room to sit up, but lying down was like lying in a bed of rocks. I wanted to scream and pinch myself hard to fight the urge. I did not want to give Madame any satisfaction. Overhead came the noises of footsteps as the hairdresser performed his job and left, and the colonel returned from headquarters to change into his dress uniform, and Madame sent Hannah running for this folderol and that, for this folderol and that. There was the sound of horse hooves and the roll of carriage wheels, and the front door opened and then closed, and the house fell quite quiet, save for Hannah's steps in the kitchen. So, Madame's off to the ball. A light appeared through the boards of the bin. "It's me," Hannah said. "She's gone." The light was set on the ground. Then there was a fumbling of a key in the padlock. The bin door opened, and Hannah peered in. "I brought you some things. Here." She handed me a chamber pot, a blanket, and a mug of water. "'Tain't right to lock you away with nothing. You ain't no animal." "Let me go, please," I pleaded. But before I could say anything further or reach for her, she had slammed down the door and shot home the lock again. "I'll be back by dawn and check on you then," she said. "Try to sleep." "Please, Hannah," I cried. "Please, I beg of you." Her footsteps flew up the stairs and the door slammed. I thought I heard a sob, but perhaps I didn't. The bees overtook me then. As evening moved into night, they ate through me and hived up inside my brain pan with a loud buzz, their wings beating me into submission. Someone whimpered and cried, and it must have been me. But it mattered not, for I was already dead. It was only a few days, hours perhaps, until my heart would stop beating, in truth, and the bees would fly off to haunt someone else. And then came the sound of a distant roar, like a lion just sprung from a trap. The bees paused, and I froze, waiting. No one was home except for Lady Seymour, and she was not capable of making such noise. The roar came again. I cocked my head and listened. It did not come from the street, nor the house above. It was not cannon fire. 'Twas inside me, a thought, a thunderous loud. Ruth was alive. Alive in Charleston, in South Carolina, not on a ship, not on an island. Alive in a town I can walk to, I thought. My toes wiggled in my sturdy black shoes, and my legs itched. I lay flat as I could on the bumpy mound of potatoes and kicked once at the boards of the bin. My heavy shoes made a terrible loud noise on the wood. I stopped, counted 100. There came no sound from overhead, no commotion out on the street. I kicked again at the same spot. The potatoes under me shifted, and the mug of water overturned. I kicked a third time. The boards did not move at all. I cursed the carpenter who had built this tomb so nicely. There has to be a way out, I thought. I kicked, stomped, slammed. I raged and screamed and fought, but nothing happened. I stopped, wiped the sweat from my face, and closed my eyes. Think, I thought. The bin stood a little taller than Ruth and was as long in both directions as it was tall. I reached up to touch the boards above my head. They were rough-hewn, put together with cold nails. My fingertips traced the length of each board, feeling along the splinters and the knots in the wood. The top was as solid as a brick wall, each nail fastened tight. I fought back the panic that rose in my throat and tested the strength of each board that ran from the top down the sides. All strong, all sound. Think. Remember, I thought. When Ruth and I slept down here, the far corners of the cellar were muddy in a heavy rain. Maybe the damp had eaten at the boards. I moved over to that corner of the bin and scooped the potatoes out of the way, heaping them behind me. I sat back and put my feet on each board in turn and pushed. The third board I tried gave way a little, So did the next two. I moved the potato heap so I could best lean against it and pushed with my legs. I kicked, and there was a quiet crack. I kicked again and leaned forward to feel the boards. The one had a piece chipped off where the wood was rotted through. The other had a long split in it. I leaned back and took a deep breath and then kicked and kicked with all my strength until the wood broke and flew into the dark. I took the stairs 2 at a time and paused before I entered the kitchen. The house was still silent. I hurried down the hall, past the grandfather clock, and up the stairs to the drawing room. I needed a map, and had to mind to steal a pass, too, if I could. I threw some wood on the fire, lit a candle from the flames, and carried it to the long dining table covered with maps and countless papers. I lit the rest of the candles on the tables, as if preparing for a feast, then searched through the papers, throwing those that were useless to me on the floor. Finally, I found a small map that showed the colonies from Massachusetts down to Georgia. The distance from Rhode Island to New York was the same as the tip of my little finger to the first knuckle under it. From New York to Charleston stretched all the way down my fingers to my palm. The crackling firewood startled me, and I glanced up. There was a movement over the hearth, and for an instant my heart caught in my throat. A ghost? The firelight brightened. No, not a ghost. I had caught sight of myself in the large mirror that hung over the mantel. I could scarce recognize me. My hands fumbled for a candle. I moved to the mirror, guarding the flame, and lit the oil lamps that were set into the wall. The mirror caught the light and reflected it back at me. I leaned in to look. In truth, it seemed I was looking at a stranger who lived beyond the glass. My face was thinner than I remembered and longer from bow to chin. My nose and mouth recollected Mamma's, but the set of my eyes, those came from Papa. As I stared, their 2 faces came forth and drifted back until I could see only me. I turned my head to the side a bit and studied the brand on my face. For the first time, I studied it hard. The capital I that proclaimed my insolent manners and crimes. I leaned closer to the mirror. The letter was a pink ribbon embroidered on my skin. I touched it, smooth and warm, flesh made into silk. The scars on Papa's cheek had been 3 lines across his cheek, carved with a sharp blade. He was proud of his marks. In the country of his ancestors, they made him into a man. I traced the I with my fingertip. This is my country, Mark. I did not ask for it, but I would carry it as Papa carried his. It made me his daughter. It made me strong. I took a step back, seeing near my whole self in the mirror. I pushed back my shoulders and raised my chin, my back straight as an arrow. This mark doesn't stand for insolent. It stands for Isabel. Okay. The clock struck 11 and made me jump. I had much to do and little time. The fastest way off the island was a boat. Much as the thought made me tremble, I searched through the sea of papers on the table until I found a chart of the tides. I ran my finger down the column. Huzza! The tide would not turn against me for a few hours. I lacked only a pass. Colonel Hawkins had been in the habit of keeping them locked in the chest in the library, but he'd become sloppy and overworked since the rebel victories. I opened the drawers of the secretary table and looked through the large boxes of official papers. There! I grabbed the paper and dashed to a small side table for a quill and a bottle of ink. I crowded the candles in close together to give me enough light. I took a deep breath to steady my hand and dipped the quill. I took a second breath and bent over to fill in the empty bits of the pass. New York, 1777. And I wrote in it 18th January in the blank space. It had been some time since I wrote out letters. The J wobbled and the R appeared to be an N. I set down the quill, wiped my damp hands on my skirt, and picked it up again. This is to certify to whomever it may concern that the bearer hereof, and that was where I had to write my name. I scratched out Isabel and stopped. I was not a Lockton, nor a Finch. Isabel, Rhode Island? That would not do. Isabel Cuff, after Papa? or Isabel Dinah after Mama. I closed my eyes and thought of home, the smell of fresh cut hay and the taste of raspberries, robins chasing bugs in the bean patch, setting worms to work at the base of the corn plants, showing Ruth what was to eat and what was flour. I opened my eyes, dipped the quill, and wrote out my true name, Isabel Gardner. Being free has the commandant's permission to pass from this garrison to whatever place she may think proper. It was signed with lots of fancy titles that belonged to the colonel and the commandant and the king himself. I wish that there would have been a space for Her Majesty Queen Charlotte of Great Britain to sign it too. She and me shared a birthday now, for I was reborn as Isabel Gardner, and that paper proved it. So she's got to pass. Let's find out where she's going. Stay tuned.